On this episode of the Bronze Metalist podcast, we talk about Pain Remains, the new album by Lorna Shore.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Bronze Metalist podcast. I'm Kale.
I'm OJ.
We're two professional broadcasters. We like metal and we'd like to talk about it.
Yep.
Today, we're going to be talking about a new album by a band called Lorna Shore.
Polly Shore, right, yes. No, I gotta stop doing that. You know, I actually really respect this band. I like them a lot.
Yeah, they're a really good band.
And I don't know why I keep...
Always dunking on the name.
I know I'm dunking on the name because it seems to bother you personally. I mean, I would never...
That's exactly why you're fucking doing
I would never do it otherwise if I was talking to somebody else.
I'm mildly annoyed.
Yeah,
by it. That's
which I think is why I keep doing it, because
it doesn't make me mad. I'm just like, come on.
You haven't started throwing shit at me. At which point they're like, okay, we're done. But I mean, I think we should be just done now anyway.
That's when when you'll stop prodding me is when I physically throw something at you.
Yeah.
It will take quite a bit for me to actually throw something at you.
Dude, I've seen you at 8:35 in the morning.
Well, yeah, but
I figure if I did it at that point, that might get a big red metal mug at my noggin.
That is a good point, but you also know well enough not to provoke me at 8:35 in the morning. Don't poke the bear who hasn't had his coffee yet.
Right.
And is, I think, a big part of why I'm so unpleasant in the morning is not only because I haven't had caffeine yet, because I have a horrible, I wouldn't say a horrible caffeine addiction, because I don't ultimately drink that much coffee, but it's just it's a load bearing, 24 ounces or whatever that I consume every morning.
Exactly. You knock that wall down, your whole house collapses.
Yeah.
That's the house of kale. It's the fall of the house of kale.
But like, in addition to, I need caffeine, is also I don't eat breakfast. And so until I get the coffee, I'm also hungry.
You ever think about waking up just like 1 hour earlier than you
No. How dare you suggest such a thing?
Because I do that. I wake up several hours before I go to work.
Yeah.
And most mornings I tell myself, as I'm trying to read the news with one eye that's blurry and the other one that's hanging out by a stalk next to my cheekbone, and trying to read the news, and if I want to go back to bed, I don't want to do this right now. Okay, and then I'm Owen Banks. And then
you turn it on.
Exactly. Turn it on. And then eventually I get through it. And then it's like, now it's 6:45. And I go, fuck it, eggs and grits.
Yeah. I don't know. I just
coffee.
I don't know why. I just don't like, I don't like going to bed earlier. I don't know why. Because like if I go to bed sometime between 11 and midnight.
Aye.
And so, but when I wake up, that's still, a solid 7 or so hours of sleep.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I will sleep 7 hours tonight. That'll be the longest sleep I've had all week.
I suppose.
Yeah, and which I should probably take a look at that, because I more and more I'll be going into a place and I'll see my reflection in some errant mirror or some piece of glass, and I'll go, oh my God, oh, that's me.
Just need to sleep more.
Creepy old man.
Who's this corpse?
Yeah.
Who's this corpse with a beard?
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, I ought to, get up a bit earlier and get some food. I also so many of our friend group, like the people that we play D&D with, are now on the thing where they wake up and work out in the morning.
Sure.
And like the exercise that I do after I get home from work, and multiple times I'm like, fucking, I don't want, like, I exercise, but then I lament the fact that I've lost like an hour of my evening. Absolutely everybody I've ever talked to, also myself, always recommend exercising before work, not after. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But again, it's like, but I don't want to go to bed earlier. I don't want to wake up earlier. Because I don't know, I'm still a child and think that going to bed later is better because you're a big boy and you get to go to bed late now. people can't tell you what your bedtime is anymore. It's like, fucking grow up. Just go to bed at 10:30 and get up a bit earlier, eat some breakfast. Like
get up at 7, get on your exercise bike like I do sometimes.
It's just a bike. That's another one of the things that you do where it's just like, this just very mildly annoys him. So
I have an exercise bike.
It is a bike that you do exercise upon.
Mine has 2 wheels.
Yes.
It's not stationary.
Yes. But anyway, I this is a complete hard left turn, but we're going to talk about Rings of Power now.
Sounds good.
So if you haven't listened to the podcast before, by the way, it's going to be a solid like 20 minutes before we talk the album. That's how every episode is. We just talk about random bullshit before we decide to finally talk about the album.
Exactly.
Because we like hanging out and we like to talk about stuff.
Right.
Season finale.
Well, baby, I mean, there's been some backlash.
Amazon's put way too much fucking money into this. It's not. There's going to be at least another season. Like, I think, and also, no amount of backlash, I think, will deafen the sound of ka-ching.
Sure.
That I'm sure that they made off of this series. I don't know if it's enough to offset the absolutely ludicrous production costs.
Was it $500 million they spent?
It's like $500 million. Yeah. So what did you think of the season finale?
I was entertained.
Sure.
Yeah. It kind of went where it sort of said it was promising to go in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I was just really hoping it wouldn't. So we're going to talk about spoilers for Rings of Power.
Right.
We're a week on from it. So if you haven't watched it yet, I would say just stop listening, go watch that, pick the episode back up. It's fine.
Right. If you've seen all the episodes and you haven't seen the final episode, I'm wondering what's wrong. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Did something heavy fall on you? Do we need to send help? Or
so here's the thing about about it. Here's the thing about just the series in general, right? Is that I'm a pedantic asshole.
Yes. I believe that was my label for you earlier this week.
Yeah. I'm a pedantic asshole who, it has a deep attachment to the lore of the Legendarium.
Right.
And I like the nitty gritty details. And
if something happens, like if a sword gets lost, it shouldn't just show up for no reason later.
Yeah, well, and that's just continuity.
Right, that's a continuity error.
That's the filmmaker in me who's never done anything with anything at all. But like that's the media consumer in me going like that doesn't make sense. Like that's just continuity. That's not a canonical issue. What has happened now is I feel like the canon has been broken sufficiently that now I can enjoy whatever comes next as if it were fan fiction.
Okay.
The same way that I could enjoy the Shadow series of video games, Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War.
Okay, because they're not canon.
They're not canon. Like in Shadow of War, Shelob, you remember the big, horrible, ugly spider that stabs Frodo in the gut, and then Sam stabs her, and she's a big, scary spider. In Shadow of War 2, for some reason, she can shapeshift into a super sexy goth lady that looks exactly like. To me, she looks like. I can't remember her name. Mila Jovovich.
Ah, gotcha.
But with like long black hair.
Sure.
That's like she's a sexy goth lady for some reason. She can shapeshift into that form for some reason
because the video game programmers made it that way.
Yeah. Yes. But like, those games are fun and enjoyable if you are not a pedantic asshole.
Sure. And
so in the show, the thing that is bothering me about the finale, there's one thing that I really like, that I'm not super bothered by, which is the reveal that Halbrand, the so-called low man, the
king of the South or whatever,
this Southlands. Castaway that meets up with Galadriel in the middle of the ocean. They go to Numenor. She finds out he is seemingly this, king of the men of the South, what will become Gondor and also Mordor,
right?
Which, Gondor is a Numenorian kingdom, but the, Numenorians don't live there yet.
Right.
So anyway, it's just the territory. And, you think he is they're presenting him as if he is a very clear reference to Aragorn. He's a reluctant king that doesn't want to be a ruler.
Has that feel to it.
He fucking looks like Aragorn.
Right.
He's got the short beard. He's got the long kind of greasy hair. He's rough around the edges. Like he looks like Aragorn. Well, it turns out that's actually Sauron.
Right.
He's been hiding himself. Adar thinks that he killed him. The Adar's the dark elf.
Right. One of the first
proto orc.
Yeah. Orc.
Sure. He is very insistent about that. But anyway, it is foreshadowed relatively well. They did a good job of foreshadowing that twist. I had such tunnel vision on the thing that I don't like, that I really don't like about the season finale, which is it is revealed that the stranger who's been hanging out with the Harfoots, the hobbits,
right,
is actually Gandalf. In the first episode he shows up in went, don't be fucking Gandalf. Don't be Gandalf. Don't be Gandalf. He's not supposed to be here for another 3,000 years. Don't be Gandalf. Don't put Gandalf in this. And they pull a bait and switch. They have these priestesses, these Easterling priestesses show up, and they think he's Sauron, and they're capturing him, trying to reveal to him who he truly is. And it turns out, no, he is Gandalf.
Well, maybe. I mean,
he said, follow your nose. It's fucking Gandalf.
Right. But maybe that's the thing he drops later when he becomes known as Saruman.
No. He's friends with hobbits. He says, follow your nose. He's Gandalf.
Maybe he's Toucan Sam.
Sure. He's it's on one hand, I'm bothered that they didn't have enough brand recognition already. They didn't already have enough brand recognition, having Galadriel in there, having Elrond in there, shoving hobbits in there where they're not supposed to be, even though I'm not bothered by that because they're charming and it makes sense why they are there but wouldn't be in the histories of Middle-earth. They did some work to make that make sense.
They didn't just suddenly appear hobbits. You wouldn't assume that, but they're not in the histories, but that's because they were hidden a lot.
Exactly. They did some work to make that make sense. It doesn't bother me. But they have all these other things. They have Sauron, they have Galadriel, they have Elrond. You didn't need Gandalf. You didn't need him. You had enough already, especially since it's not revealed until the last episode of the first season that it's even fucking Gandalf. You didn't need to be in there. And yet they shoved him in there anyway, where he's not supposed to be. And the only thing that is saving it and making me want to watch the rest of the show is I really like the actor they have playing him.
Right.
Once he's finally talking and he's up on the hilltop with Nori and he's chatting with her, he's just so perfect. If you're going to cast a younger Gandalf, which lore-wise also that doesn't really work because when the Istari came to Middle-earth, they were already old men. Right. That was the point.
They're ancient anyway.
That's not actually what they look like. That's just bodies that they were clothed in.
They're timeless, essentially.
Yeah, they were just given the form of old men because culturally across the world, people tend to listen to old men. And they were supposed to be advisors to...
Can't wait till that shit happens to me.
Yeah. But they were supposed to be advisors to kings and whatnot to help, watch out for Sauron, that sort of thing. So they were already old men. The stranger is, he's not young. Certainly he's got wrinkled around the eyes. He's got a little bit of gray in his hair and beard. He's not a young man. He's not hot, sexy 25-year-old Gandalf. No. He's
younger than me, but
he's like a middle-aged man.
What if it's Tom Bombadil and they're just throwing us a
please
throwing us a
honestly
a right curve here.
That would be so ludicrous. I would like it. That would be so completely batshit insane. I'd be fine with it.
Sure.
I'd be okay with that if it was like, oh, it's actually Tom Bombadil. What the fuck? Sure. I want to, as mad as I want to be about it, it's just like, but he's once he's finally talking, there's just so much warmth and kindness in his eyes.
Right.
Because when you got a big beard like that, you really kind of have to act with your eyes. And it's just, he just matches up with I will never be able to imagine literally anybody else.
Right.
But Ian McKellen.
Right.
As at least Gandalf, of that time. And he matches really well. There is a warmth and a kindness and a tenderness to him.
Right. That
really fits with Gandalf. And it's just a shame that he's not supposed to be there at all. So that bothers me a bit. And like the whole thing with Halbrand also means that they're really committing to really condensing the timeline of the Second Age.
Sure. Like
shoving all of these things that are supposed to happen over the course of about a millennia into what I assume will be a couple of years. It's that bothers me a little bit, but I like the twist because at the very least it was foreshadowed. Like in the episode where they finally get to the Southlands and they fight off the orcs and they capture Adar, and they're Halbrand comes into the barn and he talks to Adar and he's like, do you remember me?
Yeah.
And then later in that same episode, Adar's like, I killed Sauron. That didn't occur to me at all. Because again, I had complete tunnel vision on the stranger being Sauron because I didn't want him to be Gandalf. So they got me, but it is one of those things of like, I am so tired of so much media trying deliberately to pull a fast one on the audience because subverting your audience's expectations is not always a good thing.
Yeah, especially if you're just doing it for the act of subversion.
Yeah.
If it doesn't help the story, then
it's okay for your audience to predict things to happen in the story. That doesn't necessarily mean that predictability doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. As long as what you're doing is well written and compelling, then being predictable is all right. Because then it can get your audience excited about where it's going. Like, oh, I see where this is going. That's going to be really cool.
Right.
And then completely pulling the rug out from under them and going like, nope, now this thing is happening.
Come on.
It can feel kind of cheap.
Right.
But I'm going to watch the next season. The show hasn't completely lost me. I will say I was a little bothered by the fact that the show is called The Rings of Power. And they make 3 of the fucking things in the last episode. The same episode where the concept of making these things at all was introduced. Halfway through the episode, not even at the beginning of the episode.
I don't know, but I think maybe this is another subversion anyway, because if you remember what the rings look like, right? I think what happened was somebody took 75 cents to the grocery store and they put quarters in the machines and they got these aren't the rings of power. Aha!
They were a little cheap looking.
Yeah.
I think I do like theoretically the idea of like the gems that are put in the rings not being like super symmetrically cut gems. They're still like rough gems and whatnot. I kind of like that theoretically, but they kind of make the rings themselves look a little cheap.
Yeah.
And that's sort of a weird, like, so much of this show, like the sets are really good. The environments are really good. There's a lot of stuff that's filmed on location. But then there are certain things, like certain costume things that I really don't like. Like all of the Númenóreans' armor, I fucking hate. The Númenóreans' armor looks awful. It looks like decently made cosplay that you might see. And also is like, I don't know if it's supposed to be leather or if it's like a weird paint, like matte tan painted metal because it's the fish scales, and like, yeah, there was scale armor historically, but sort of depends on the period. Like Galadriel's armor, I've got some issues with this, mostly because it doesn't look convincingly like metal. It doesn't look like it's actually metal. To me, it clearly looks like it's silver painted hard rubber or something.
I'm trying to remember though, was Galadriel in canon, was she ever really actually the queen of an army of some sort? I don't remember that part.
I don't think so. If I remember correctly, there are some passing mentions of her being her doing some fighting and that sort of thing. Galadriel is kind of one of my blind spots as far as characters go. I don't know if she was really. Ow, God! Cat jumped off my lap and decided, I'm going to dig claws in as I do this.
Sure.
Little asshole. But yeah, I don't know if she really was. And that's a change that I'm fine with.
Okay.
But like, speaking of Galadriel, something we were talking about before we started recording is in the second to last episode, they introduced the idea that Galadriel was married, but her husband, Celeborn, she thinks he's dead. Right,
but she thinks he's dead. I think we're still in the clear here. We're going to find out that no, he was alive all this time.
I hope that's the case because the man is in The Lord of the Rings.
Exactly.
He's there with her. He has dialogue. Not in the theatrical version of the movies, but in the extended edition, he has an important conversation with Aragorn. And he's obviously in the books in that same situation. He talks to the Fellowship. He is there. Like Galadriel is absolutely in charge, but he is there, and he's a relatively important figure in the history of Middle Earth.
Right.
Primarily by his association with Galadriel, but like I hope he's not just dead, and that they threw him away so they can have Galadriel hook up with someone else. Like you could make like, I don't know. Cause again, they did the thing of like, there was some implied romantic tension between Galadriel and Halbrand, aka Sauron.
Right.
And that continued into their conversation when she finds out that he is Sauron and he like reveals himself to her. There is still like some kind of romantic tension there.
So maybe they're gonna get together next season.
How
would you feel about that?
Awful. But like, and they, in that conversation, they show the first sort of temptations of that darker kind of spooky witchy side of Galadriel that she shows off in Lord of the Rings. That intense desire for power that she has, and that is a canonical aspect of Galadriel. She does have a very strong desire for power. That's why she's even still in Middle Earth at the time of the Lord of the Rings, because she's holding on to this kingdom that she has built for herself.
Right.
But
luckily they found Mithril so that she could stay there.
Yeah. That whole plot line I'm not a huge fan of, but it has resolved itself now because they made the rings and it's not a problem anymore. But there's just a lot of stuff that bugs me, but ultimately none of it was enough to make me so mad that I'm not going to watch the rest of the show.
Sure.
I did audibly yell at my television multiple times watching the last episode. Almost all of it was, "Oh, fuck you." Fuck off. Come on. You motherfuckers. It was all that, but I don't know. I'm interested to see where it goes.
I like to imagine that while this was happening, your TV wasn't actually on.
It's just completely blank screen.
Completely blank screen that you were yelling obscenities
just
at.
Sitting there fuming over nothing. I mean, that has happened, but I thought it was all right. Nothing that I saw throughout the season made me go, this is the best thing I've ever seen.
Right.
But I think the show has some heart, and it's in a little hobbit named Nori.
Yes.
Because a lot of the other characters are not particularly likable. I like Elrond. I like Elrond well enough. I think he's pretty likable. Galadriel is interesting, but not like super likable and easy to form an emotional attachment to. I don't like the fucking kid in the Southlands, Theo.
Right.
I fucking hate him. And I don't give a shit about the elf and Theo's mom. I don't remember their names. Like I don't care, because also it's like, why are you doing elf human romance? Don't. I'm just, every scene that they're in, I'm waiting for one of them to die, basically.
Sure.
Before they make a non-canonical child. For these two non-canonical characters making a non-canonical elf-human hybrid.
They have half elves. I mean, that's a thing already.
It is, but it's also a very significant thing in the history of the Lord of the Rings, because there have been very, very, very few of them. And the product of, at this point in history, only 2 marriages. Beren and Luthien, ever. There were 4 people at this point, 2 elves and 2 men. It was Beren and Luthien and Tuor and Idril. Those were the only 2. And then their 2 grandchildren, I think, were Elwing and Arundel, Elrond's parents.
Right.
So Elrond at this point is the only half elf currently living, because all the other descendants died. But like it's a very significant sort of thing when it happens, because it has been extremely, extremely rare. And that's also part of why Aragorn and Arwen is so special, is because it's history repeating itself again in along the same lines again, because they're both also descended from they're distantly related. Arwen is significantly closer to their common ancestor than Aragorn is.
Right. They're not as close as, say, Franklin and Eleanor.
Yeah. Yes. Bringing back to a conversation we had before we started recording. But yeah, like they're very distant relatives, but they're both part of this lineage. It's a very like significant thing when it happens. And hey, in the first episode, the elf's buddy was like, you shouldn't do this. Every time, this has been attempted, it's ended in tragedy. And I'm just waiting for that prediction to come true, basically. I don't hate them, but I don't particularly like them either. It feels like a cheap romance story. It's like, oh, you have to have this romance story in there to get people invested.
Right. What do you think about the dwarves?
I think the dwarves are fine. I liked Prince Durin. I think he's a fun character. I like his wife. I think they're a fun little team.
Yeah.
And I think that they're probably going to get some dwarven rings, and there's going to be some strife that happens there, and it's going to be compelling because I like the 2 of them.
And I feel like you were right before when you said this, like at work, that
the old man's going to die.
Well, I think within the story, Durin is always a reincarnation of the previous Durin.
Yes.
So the fact that there's 2 Durins,
one of them's going to die.
Well, I mean, one of them should have been dead a long time ago.
Well, I mean, I think you can have, like, it's not like there can only be one. It's that, this person is similar enough.
Well, but at the actual reincarnation of the story is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
The old man is definitely going to die because he doesn't want to get the mithril. Durin Jr. does. And then they had the teaser at the end of the 6th episode of the Balrog, which, by the way, I really hope that Durin's Bane has like dialogue, because Balrogs aren't just monsters. They're the same type of creature as Sauron and Gandalf. They're just demons. They're, massive and powerful
in a different form.
Yeah, they're like Sauron was basically Morgoth's intelligence chief. Sauron's general was a Balrog named Gothmog, who was, very powerful and extremely dangerous. And so I'd like to see this Balrog presented as something more than just a monster that lives underground, like as an intelligent creature. When
they walk up to him, you want him to go, "Hey, what's going on, guys?
Hey, I can talk.
I'm Balrog.
I have a big fire sword
down here doing Balrog stuff.
I have this fire whip.
Yep.
Now I'm gonna kill you.
I'm gonna kill you, but also I've got some hot pockets. And,
warm them up myself because I'm made of fire and shadow.
Sure.
I didn't put any of the shadow in the hot pocket.
No,
just fire
and cheese.
Yeah, I put the cheese. I made the cheese myself.
Exactly, because this is Middle Earth. You can't exactly go to the grocery store and buy hot pockets. I mean, what do you think?
I've got cows down here.
Exactly,
and a farm to make the dough. And what else do you need? I grew my own tomatoes.
Yeah,
and my own herbs.
Right,
to put in the marinara. What a nice people.
Yeah.
People got a lot of bad things to say about Balrogs, but really, if you get to know them,
they get a bad rap. They do, yeah.
The whole, serving the First Lord of Darkness,
exactly. I mean,
leading armies of orcs, slaughtering the people. But when you really get down to it and get to know them,
you get to really experience their Balrogity.
They're actually really good people.
Exactly.
If you just take the time to get to know them.
They're not just one-dimensional creatures. There's breadth and depth in there.
Yeah. But I think, though, to be serious for a second, it would be a really cool moment to have this thing like going about doing its scary monster shit like people who've only seen the Jackson movies expect, because they just see it as this big, scary, demonic creature.
Right.
And then to have it, even if it doesn't say a whole sentence, if it just says one word, that's unexpected and scary if you don't understand that a Balrog is what it is. Like, if you don't really know what a Balrog is, like, even if it just says like, die or something like that, like, that's scary. Because suddenly this, you realize this horrifying monster can think. Right. Which you probably already should realize because it has a sword and a whip. Right. Animals don't usually use those, but
knows how to use tools.
Yeah.
So it's at least a capuchin.
Yes.
Intelligence.
So let's talk about the album.
All right.
We talked about Rings of Power long enough. I could probably have more to say, but
we could go on.
Yeah, we've gone on long enough. So let's talk about Lorna Shore. So Lorna Shore is an American deathcore band from Flemington, New Jersey. They formed in 2009. It took them a couple of years, though. Actually, fairly decent couple of years before they put out an album, though. There was a couple of early EPs that I don't know where to go to find them. Their very first EP was called Triumph, and that's more of a metalcore album. Their second EP is Bone Kingdom, and I have listened to that a long time ago, and that's more of a deathcore album, but it's very much like, 2010 deathcore band's first EP. The production's not the best in the world.
Sure.
Back then, they had a vocalist named Tom Barber. At the moment, there's no original members of the band left, although the lead guitarist and the drummer both joined during the Bone Kingdom days, which my understanding of the band is like that. They kind of consider that to be their genesis at this point of like, that was the first album where we were kind of doing what we would continue to do. And so at the moment, the band is made up of Adam D'Amico, I don't know, who's the lead guitarist. Then we've got Austin Archie, who's the drummer. They're the two longest running members of the band.
Sure.
Andrew O'Connor playing the rhythm guitar, Michael Yeager on bass, and Will Ramos on vocals. And what a set of vocal cords that man has.
Yeah. This band has 4 singers, right? I mean, this kind of sounds like, sometimes. So a little bit more about the band's history. Their third EP is called Maleficum, or Maleficium is what it is actually, came out in 2013. And that is sort of the one that sort of put them on the map as like, oh, hey, these guys might kind of be something. That was around that time that I discovered them and sort of started listening to them.
They had a single called Godmaker that was sort of a staple, a lot of deathcore playlists at the time. And they ended up on tour with a bunch of other bigger bands, Carnifex, Black Dahlia Murder, Archspire Within the Ruins, whatnot. Like that sort of era of deathcore ended up on tour with a lot of bands that were big at the time, and some of which are still big. Tours with like Cattle Decapitation and Rivers of Nile, Fit for an Autopsy, so on and so forth.
Love all those.
Then they put out their first album, Flesh Coffin, which is one that I was underwhelmed by. I had been a fan of the band already, and they put out Flesh Coffin, and it was just like, or actually, no, it was the Psalms is their first album, rather. That came out in 2015, and it was like, that's all right. They had a tendency to put there was like a weird filter that they put over Tom Barber's voice, where it was like, I don't think it was significantly altering his voice, but it was enough that his voice sounded weirdly. The only way I can describe it is crunchy.
Really?
It just a strange effect that was on his vocals. And I haven't listened to any of his stuff with Chelsea Grin since he joined that band. So I don't know if his vocals have continued to sound like that, or if that was just a weird artifact of their production back then. But Psalms I was not particularly pleased by. It was all right. And then Flesh Coffin came out, and I don't think I ever actually even listened to it.
Really?
Because it was just like, these guys are okay, but I am kind of all right with just not continuing to keep track of them. And then Tom Barber left in 2018 to join Chelsea Grin, who had been going through some lineup changes after their original vocalist left, and he signed on to replace them. And then Lorna Shore has a guy called CJ McCreery who signs on, was a very good vocalist, very talented. And they put out an album in 2020 called Immortal that was very well reviewed. And then very shortly after the album came out, a number of allegations of abuse came out about CJ McCreery, and they immediately fired him, as they should. And they were kind of in limbo a little bit until they hired a guy named Will Ramos to fill in as their vocalist, just, for the tour that they were on. And then they're like, hey, this guy's pretty good. Let's make an EP with him. And they released a single from that EP called Into the Hellfire, and it went absolutely fucking gangbusters on the internet. It went completely viral because everyone was like, who the fuck is this new vocalist? Holy shit. As they should, because Will Ramos is a fucking monster with his vocals. He is like truly insane amount of range.
They took him into a laboratory. To like, what the fuck is going on in your throat, buddy?
And they like, I was reading a review talking about how like they went viral with that, and Will Ramos kind of became like an overnight sensation in the extreme metal community. And they've very much capitalized on that, viral success and sort of shoving Will kind of into the spotlight in a way that has glossed over, the previous vocalist, and, obviously the rest of the band wasn't involved with that, but like a good way of making people kind of forget about that and any stain that might have had on the rest of the band.
Right.
And like, putting Will in the spotlight also doesn't seem to have bothered Will all that much, because he seems like a very charming and fun guy.
Right. Just a regular dude. I mean, he's kind of got that whole...
He's got the look.
He's got the look thing.
He's got the neck tattoos and the gauged ears and everything.
And the perfect haircut and all that stuff.
But he, every video I've seen with him, he's just fun, energetic. Sure. Seems like a really nice dude. And he's done a whole bunch of video collaborations with people all over the internet. And just, seems like a solid dude. And my God, holy shit. The sheer number of techniques that he can do, the deepest, growliest, just nastiest, gurgly, vocals, to really high, really nasally shrieks, everything in between. stuff that's semi-melodic, stuff that is like just weird little voices that he can do. He can do everything. The man's a tour de force of extreme metal vocals. And yeah, this album is highly anticipated. I will say for me, overall, I think this is an amazing album. For me, I think it did not quite live up to the hype. I found the songwriting on a number of the songs to be a little formulaic.
Yeah. They didn't step out of the box very much.
They have a trick. They do it very well.
Right.
But they have a trick and they keep doing it.
It's very, very well performed. Very, very technically perfect.
Very tight.
Very tight.
But it can get a little boring at times. Some of the songs are about a minute too long. But what is there is just, it's really, really, really well done. And it's like it's well performed. But yeah, they kind of have a formula in a lot of the songs that they don't quite really break from. It's very kind of standard song structure on a lot of them of like verse, chorus, verse, breakdown, key change.
And standard use of the instruments as well. I mean, very good, but very standard.
And the thing that sort of like makes them relatively special is they have a very prominent symphonic element.
The keyboards in this are very well laid in.
Yes, really good. This has a really good mix. I think at least for the headphones that I was listening through, and it might be I didn't play with the settings to maybe turn the bass down in my my wireless headphones, which I like quite a lot. But I should have maybe adjusted to put the bass in like the middle. For at least the headphones that I was listening to, the bass was a little overwhelming. But generally very well mixed album. And I read a review, I think it was Angry Metal Guy, who talked about they kind of stick to the Yngwie Malmsteen school of more is more. Everything is over the top. Everything is as intense as it can be.
Right.
Even the moments that are songwriting wise meant to be less intense are pumped up to the maximal that they can possibly be.
Kind of loses the dynamic that they might have been trying to go for.
Possibly. Well, I think it's just like, what is the emotion you're supposed to be feeling here?
Right.
Let's do everything we can to make it the most intense version of that emotion. And to their credit, like it works most of the time. But yeah, like it's just I would love to see, like, now that they have had this, what has been critically and I hope commercially kind of a smash hit, a slam dunk for them. I'm hoping they can capitalize that and on their next project do something that's a little out of left field, a little more different.
Right.
Something that kind of pushes the boundaries in sort of a different way, because I've seen this album as described as boundary pushing, but I think they're pushing the boundary of deathcore, but into directions that are already well trod by other genres.
Right. So their next album should be like good deathcore, and they should be pushing the boundary. It'd be like Lorna Shore featuring Les Claypool.
Sure.
I would buy that in an instant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to hear what that sounds like.
Fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I would love to see something from them in the future that is a bit more different, that plays with just a bit more, even just more variety. One of the songs that really stands out the most to me is the song Soulless Existence, entirely because it is, for the most part, a slower song with a different kind of melody to it. The last like minute has this riff. The main riff even is like the dun 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 dun. That's completely that's completely not it, but like the main riff of that is slower.
Right.
The drums are still going absolutely fucking insane, but like the main riff is a bit slower, and it's this sort of mournful tremolo picked thing. And I would like to hear more of that sort of thing, instead of just like, all right, you know, verse, chorus, verse, breakdown, solo, end of song. Or another verse, chorus, Surus, the Surus River.
Yes.
But yeah, like it's just kind of, a lot of the songs are kind of samey.
Right.
But man, if you're going to do something over and over again, do it well. And they do. So of course, the other thing that stands out is the 3-part title track.
The title track. That's really, if you're going to this album, that's kind of,
that's what I'm here for.
That's the raison d'etre. That's right. That's why you would listen to this.
Like,
I mean, you're going to ask later, typically, what's your favorite song in this? It's got to be the title track.
Yeah. Like how the fuck can it not be?
Right.
I do actually really like the opening cut as well.
Or the track 2. You know, I mean, like the intro. There's an intro opening cut, and then it becomes.
Well, at least on Spotify, those are the same track.
Oh, okay.
It's 7 minutes 21 seconds.
Okay.
that you know, symphonic opener.
Sure, that's great.
With the choir is in the same track as the main meat of that song. I like that one as well. That one also is a bit different in its songwriting, which makes it stand out and makes it a good opener.
Right.
And that's also why Soulless Existence kind of stands out. But yeah, Pain Remains 1, 2, and 3. Jesus Christ.
Fantastic.
Holy shit. And these are songs and music videos. I still haven't watched the third music video yet.
Wow.
But the music videos and the songs came out in the lead up to the album, with the third one coming out same day as the album. And I was kind of thinking, like, after the end of part 2, that maybe part 3 would be, you know, oh, hey, everything's gonna be all right.
No.
I should have saw that the name of part 3 is In a Sea of Fire. Because it tells a story of someone who has lost someone else that is very dear to them. In the music video, it's this man who seems to have lost his wife or his girlfriend to some unknown circumstance, and he's not having a good time. And at the end of the second music video, he commits suicide. Like the song, at least the lyrics of part 3 are basically about like, fuck it, I'm going to tear everything down because nothing matters to me anymore.
Sure.
But then, like, at the very end of it, the really aggressive parts of the song fades out, and then there is the piano of the main melody from part 2, and then it's just weaved back into oh God, it's so good.
It is.
It's really, really, really good. So overall, I think this is, if you are a fan of deathcore, if you are a fan of extreme metal, this is worth your time.
Sure.
This album fucking slaps.
Does, yes.
Holy shit, does it slap.
A lot.
And if you're the type of person that doesn't mind listening to kind of the same thing over and over again, you're not going to have any problem with this album.
Right.
If you crave a bit more variety, there's songs that you can pick and choose that you will really enjoy, and there are songs that you can leave out.
Right.
And even for me, if I'm just picking and choosing the songs that I really enjoy, that's still, you know, a half an hour of music. Yeah. This is a long album. This album is an hour and 1 minute long. So if you want a bit more variety in your songwriting, there are songs that you can pick and choose that feel different from each other. Overall, this album has gone over pretty well with critics, 87.9.
Nice.
We already said what our favorite song is.
Right.
It's the title trilogy.
Songs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, they blend into each other very seamlessly.
Right.
thematically they're linked together in a way that cannot be disentangled. Like they don't work. The only one that works on its own is part 3, maybe. Like part 3 you can kind of throw into a playlist and it won't the transition between songs won't sound quite so weird. But the other 2 have to be together because part 1 will end very abruptly. Because they had to cut it. If they wanted to split it into parts, they had to cut it there. But because of the way the songs are, it's in the middle of one of Will's vocals. So it's just a very hard cut. But this is good stuff. What metal do you bestow upon it like Masganada to Chewbacca?
I give it a very strong silver.
I have to agree. Before the last time I listened to it, was like, am I going to give this a gold? And I was like, no, I don't think I will. It is just not quite. There's so much potential for them to make something that is truly, truly legendary. Like they definitely have an opportunity with their next album to make the greatest deathcore album ever made.
Right.
But at the moment, they're on the path.
Right.
And I think they've got probably the best vocalist in the game at the moment.
Right.
Capitalize on that. Keep moving. Push yourselves. Think about your songwriting. Maybe do something kind of progressive. Fuck around with your time signatures.
Right.
Make something weird and crazy. And then I'll really enjoy it. But maybe that's not what they want to do. Maybe they want to make, stuff that's easy to perform to big crowds. And that's absolutely fine. But I don't know. I like this, but it's not as good as it could be. It's not as good as it could be. That's all.
Right.
So next week, what do you want to talk about?
Something that I feel like maybe you haven't listened to all the way through from almost 30 years ago.
Okay.
I've debated doing this for years, by the way.
Okay.
And now I'm finally going to throw it at you.
Okay.
Vulgar display of power.
All right. Yeah, sure. We'll talk about Pantera. Pantera. Calm down, Pantera. Yeah, sure. Vulgar Display of Power by Pantera next week. So until you hear from us, then why don't you go ahead on your dark rectangle and search up the Facebook or the Twitter.
I thought you were going to say dark rectum, and I was going to go, why? Why?
Look up your dark rectum.
There you will find us.
Gaze into its depths. You're going to need a mirror.
Perhaps a flashlight.
Fuck.
Where do we find your podcast? In your ass.
Go to Facebook and Twitter. Follow us on there.
Yeah.
If you want to.
All right.
Maybe that's the way you prefer to get updates about when episodes come out. Otherwise, just follow us on whatever you're using to listen to us. Apple Podcast app, Libsyn's the podcast source.
Sure.
Whatever it might be. Just follow us on there. Go ahead. Do it. What are you waiting for?
Again, and it would be weird if you went to go look at it on YouTube, or doesn't that happen anymore?
I think it still happens. I don't know. I haven't bothered to look.
Yeah, nobody else has
it. Listening to an audio podcast on YouTube is a little bizarre.
It is.
But anyhow, thanks for listening to another episode of the Bronze Metalist Podcast. I'm Kale.
I'm OJ. Congratulations.
I knocked over my microphone.